All right, I thought I'd hop on this morning to talk a little bit about some of my belief systems, primarily atheism, which I am an atheist. I'm not afraid to admit that. I've been more public about it recently, honestly, to mixed results. I've had some people very accepting of it, uh, and then I've had people who try to convince me otherwise. I have yet for anyone to say, Caleb, you're damned to perdition for all of eternity. Repent now. I live in a very Christian area, so being an atheist is a tad bit controversial, especially publicly. But I felt at this point in my life that I have been under the subjugation of Christian hegemony um, in this area for so long that I needed to be open about my beliefs, or I should say my lack of belief, because I don't believe in anything supernatural. I don't believe in gods. I'm a naturalist, and I'm an atheist. Um, so I kind of just figured I'd talk about how I got there. I was raised in a Christian household. My parents aren't very religious, actually. My mom could be considered an atheist, I think, but she doesn't really talk about it. My dad, he was raised Christian too, so we went to a Lutheran church here in the Great Frozen North, and growing up Lutheran, I was baptized, I had confirmation, went to Sunday school, went to church services, suffered through the most mind-numbingly boring sermons one could imagine. It was an interesting foundation for the rest of my life, one that proved to be not that important, honestly. But I grew up Christian and hearing Christian doctrine, and for a while I was a believing Christian for a while. I remember specifically when my grandmother died. I don't remember how old I was. I might have been 10 years old, something like that. She passed away from a heart attack, and we were on a family road trip, and we were supposed to be coming back to our rural community to partake in a kind of a, I think it was a church rehearsal for a play we had coming up. It might have been some Easter function, I believe. And I remember upon hearing the news, breaking down crying, being 10 years old at the time, being relatively close to my grandmother. It was a very hard loss, and I was quite crestfallen about the whole thing. So I ended up saying, I need to go to the church, and I prayed in that church, and I felt the Lord come through me. The Lord come through me. And, it brought me a lot of solace and catharsis to be in the house of God at the time and pray. But as I grew into my teenage years, I started to have more doubts about stuff like that. I started watching YouTube videos that were political in nature to begin with. I became rather alt-right at the time, actually. I watched a lot of like Sargon of Akkad videos at the time, as cringeworthy as it is for me to say that now, because now I am the complete political opposite, the antithesis of a alt-right individual. If alt-right is even still in vogue, I think they're just called MAGA now. But I I kind of found my way into watching things like The Amazing Atheist and other channels I can't remember. Non-Stamp Collector, who I still watch. I still love his videos. I think kind of swayed me into having some more doubts and, really questioning my beliefs and my faith at the time. Which led to me becoming what I'd like to call a militant atheist. And I went out and purchased a copy of The God Delusion, and read it. I, at the time, didn't read much of it. I just kind of picked my way through it and found things that I liked. Kind of like people cherry picking the Bible. I was cherry picking the God delusion for these arguments that I would use against theists at the time, because I was very militantly anti-theist at the time. I had a lot of anger, because that's also the inspiration for me being alright. I had a lot of anger towards other individuals, and that was a lot of growing up with autism and never really being accepted into a social group properly. So I had a lot of anger at the time, but as I grew up a little bit, my extremist views died down, and I found myself still being an atheist, but not an angry one. You know, I was cool with people's religion. At this time, I had no interest in religion, though, which is something that has changed, because actually religion now is extraordinarily fascinating to me. And just the psychology of it and the history. I read the Bible. I watch videos on the Bible from scholars. Shout out Dan McClellan. I think he does wonderful work. That's controversial. Some people will be like, he's misrepresenting the facts and he's a Mormon, so you can't listen to him. And he has radical interpretations. I don't know. I like his interpretations because he separates the dogmatic beliefs from the actual textual evidence. But I'm not going to get sidetracked with that. I'm going to go back to my story. That I had become a mellow atheist at this time. And everything changed in the spring and summer of 2021. In the spring and summer of 2021, I had a manic episode and a psychotic episode. And I was diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder, bipolar type. I became, overnight, extraordinarily Christian. I went out and I bought a Bible at Goodwill. Not a very good translation. I think it's the Good News Bible, which I think is meant for children and missionaries. So it wasn't a great translation of the Bible, but at the time I didn't care. You know, I just wanted to read the Gospels because all of a sudden I was obsessed with Christ, and this was being driven by psychosis. It is surreal to think about now, because the way the whole thing worked was I abandoned all logic and reasoning in this psychosis and came to this conclusion that Jesus was real and he was coming back soon, and I had these hallucinations of my hands glowing with golden light, and I just was enveloped by this feeling of intense religious fervor that came over me. And this lasted for quite a while. At the time, I also, shortly after I got on medication and kind of stabled out, I was still extraordinarily Christian, just kind of out of nowhere. And it was concerning to my family and friends and acquaintances, because I wasn't known as a particularly, what's the word I want to use here? Pious individual, obviously being an atheist, but the piety that I had found and the fervor and the just dedication to it. I was praying multiple times a day. I would take my shoes off when I pray. I would cry when I prayed, and I would pray for 30 minutes at a time, just one continuous prayer, full of tears and asking for deliverance and salvation. It was very emotionally difficult at the time. But shortly around late 2021, early 2022, I got a girlfriend who was an evangelical Christian. She was drawn to me because I was very open about my mental health struggles at the time, and my Christianity too, I think, attracted her too. I remember she told me that she really started to like me because on our first date I suggested that we sit on the same side of the booth, which is a good dating strategy actually if you really want to get to know somebody. I wouldn't use it for a first date though, but sitting next to people can bring closeness and intimacy, I feel. But the praying over the meal really entranced her, and we quickly had a short whirlwind romance. My addiction issues at the time put an end to that. But I did go to church with her, and at this time I also, shortly after that relationship ended, I ended up going to treatment for substance use and schizophrenia, both of which were pretty bad at the time. And I had been to this treatment center before, but I had been kind of weeble wobbly on my religious beliefs at the time, so it wasn't a huge deal. But this time I was very devout and I was very enveloped by psychosis. I had an experience in the church bathroom in which I thought Yeshua, Jesus Christ, the Son of Man, was speaking to me through the mirror. And that was purely psychosis. But at the time it was extraordinarily emotionally moving. So, yeah, I had all these things adding up, and then that treatment I was reading the Bible devoutly, reading the Gospels. I was there for 70-something days, and I read the Gospels through and through like 3 times, plus Acts and Corinthians. I didn't finish the New Testament. I wasn't reading the Old. I read the Old Testament too. I read Genesis, Exodus, and Leviticus, and I got to Numbers. And Numbers was extraordinarily boring. Leviticus was tedious. It's a tedious read. It's all legislative code, in case you've never read it before. It's almost a difficult read because it repeats the same thing and instructions for sacrifice and building the tabernacle and a whole bunch of other things multiple times. Exodus, at the end of the Exodus story, it has that too. But nevertheless, when I was at this treatment center, I was extraordinarily religious. And then I happened to, one day they would bring us to the library so we could get books. And I was getting all these books on medieval art because I love medieval art. I think it's some of the best artwork, especially some of the Christian works. I really appreciate Christian art, actually, as an atheist. I still do. But they brought us to this library, and I was at the library, and I was looking through the books on religion, and I had checked out C.S. Lewis' Mere Christianity. I was going to read Mere Christianity. But then I saw The God Delusion, and, it opened up kind of an old door inside me. It's like, hey, I have this book, and I never finished reading it. I'm going to open it and flip through it. And I got to the part where he's talking about is it the contingency of the cosmological argument that Thomas Aquinas proposed. And Dawkins in the book, Richard Dawkins, the author, he goes into kind of a tirade about the 4 proofs. I believe it's 4 proofs of God's existence by Thomas Aquinas. And I read them, and it was like in the Dark Knight, when they have the sky hook and he has that guy and they go flying back out of the window. That's how it felt for me. It was like coming out of psychosis at a rapid rate at like 5 Gs. I was just yanked backwards. And all of a sudden, all my religious belief just fell through. Because it was like every logical thing that I had thought, because I thought I had been so logical, but I hadn't been. I had been very dogmatic. All of a sudden, it was like my logical brain turned back on, and suddenly, none of my beliefs made sense. And this was extraordinarily emotionally difficult. I was gutted by this. It was extremely difficult to cope with losing your faith, especially that fast. And people say, Caleb, you never had faith to begin with. No, I used to look up at the sky for prophecy. It was a psychotic Christianity. It wasn't a normal Christianity. It was heavily influenced by schizophrenia. So I I got yanked out of these beliefs, and I was very depressed for a couple weeks, months probably. I had been wearing a crucifix that my girlfriend had gave me, made of nails, and I hung it up. I couldn't even wear it anymore. I Yeah, it's wild to think about. It was extremely tough, though. I was just crestfallen and morose, and just, yeah, couldn't be more defeated. But I came out the other side. Came out the other side. I had an argument. I'm going to be very careful about how I talk about this, because I'm not sure of the legality of this, but there were people at the treatment center who I would talk to about God, and we had almost an argument when all of a sudden I was an atheist again. They said, well, there has to be something out there. And I'm like, why does there have to be something out there? Well, because what did everything come from? I'm like, maybe everything has always existed. That's what I believe now, that everything has always existed in one form or another, and that the universe is either cyclical or infinite, or the multiverse theory too is interesting to me. But excuse me, I'm still waking up this morning. So I came to the conclusion after this argument that this was going to be something I needed to keep to myself. And after I left the treatment center, I was a deist, I would say, actually, at the time. I still believed in some sort of intelligence in the universe that is responsible for everything. But that belief would go away after a while. So for a while, it wasn't a big deal to me until all of a sudden I started reading the Bible again. And I was extraordinarily interested by it. I started listening to people like Alex O'Connor and Genetically Modified Skeptic and Aaron Ra and other famous YouTube atheists. And I finally, just this year, got around to actually reading the entire God Delusion, which I found to be a bit heavy-handed. It had some good points, and Dawkins is a very competent writer, and he's a very intelligent individual, but I believe he can be a little anti-theistic at times. I'm anti-theistic as far as beliefs damaging others. Take, for example, in Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, their prohibition of homosexuality I find abhorrent. They're justifying hatred with these verses. They're letting these Jewish thinkers from 2,000 plus years ago, not in the case of Islam. Islam came out of the 700s, I believe, when the Prophet Muhammad lived. But the thing that I find myself with Christians is they're allowing these Iron Age, Bronze Age thinkers to set their morality for them, with not questioning the book or being Bible literalist or assuming univocality, that the entire book speaks the same thing, and it doesn't. One of the things I absolutely hate is people justifying the hatred of homosexuals with Leviticus 18:33 and Leviticus 20:13. If a man lies with another man, he has committed an abomination before God and should be killed. You know what else it says in Leviticus? That you should not wear wool and linen together. That is a horrible sin. that you should not eat crustaceans or pigs. And I hear a lot of Christians justify this by saying, well, Jesus came with a new covenant and he changed the law, so we don't need to follow those old laws. Then why are you still following Leviticus 18:33 and Leviticus 20:13? What? Those are Old Testament laws. Oh, your Jewish Bible laws. I prefer to call it the Torah, or the Jewish Bible, or the Hebrew Bible, I should say, not the Jewish Bible, the Hebrew Bible. But if Jesus has come to fulfill a new covenant, why are we still persecuting homosexuals? Oh yeah, because you don't like homosexuals, and you need something to justify that dislike of homosexuals and LGBTQIA plus folks. Kind of a long acronym, but I'm a huge supporter of them. I'm kind of a humanist. I believe in human rights and the end of racism, the end of bigotry, the end of poverty and war. I think we should strive to end all these things. But I see a lot of crappy behavior that people try to justify with their religion. It doesn't just extend to homosexuals. I've seen, the way Protestants treat Catholics. They believe in the same savior of humanity, Jesus, yet they can't get along because of the church structure. I've seen hatred towards Jews, and Jews' hatred towards Muslims, and Muslims' hatred towards Jews, and Muslims' hatred towards Christians, and Christians' hatred towards Muslims. And it's like, they're all Abrahamic religions. They believe in a lot of the same things. They just have different talking points and sticking points. So that's one of the main reasons I don't find myself particularly attracted to the Abrahamic religion, at least. As for indigenous religions, Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, Zoroastrianism, the Druze, I don't believe in anything supernatural, and I'm not sure all those groups do. They're atheistic Buddhists. I shouldn't make claims like that. I retract my previous statement about those groups because I'm not educated enough on those groups to make a formal statement. So, I don't know how to edit videos, in case you haven't noticed. So I kind of do these in one big stream of consciousness presentation. So, some other points that I'd like to make about atheism. Atheism does not mean you're not a moral individual. I've heard this argument. Where do you get your morality from? I've seen people say, I get my morality from the Bible, and that's all I need. And how can you have morality without it? Basic human decency, I think, explains a lot of it. Murder is wrong, is almost universal. There's probably someone out there who believes murder is right, but almost universally, murder is wrong. Stealing is wrong. Cheating is wrong. Extramarital affairs are wrong. These basic things that are kind of accepted in our culture as being wrong. I don't need the Bible to tell me these things are wrong because they feel morally wrong. You know when you're doing something wrong most of the time. And I've seen a lot of people say atheists, they have nothing stopping them from going out and committing murder other than them being a decent human being. You've probably met atheists online who are, anti-theist, who just club religion is a mental illness, and I don't believe that. I believe people can be deluded, and I believe the mentally ill can have religious delusions, because I did. As someone mentally ill, I feel qualified to speak on that matter. But the atheist has morality, and you should ignore the anti-theist who beats you over the head with Bible verses and just hostility. I think we should approach each other without hostility. That being said, I do have to talk about some of the social implications of being an atheist in the Great North. I'm not going to say what state I live in, but I live in the North. I live in a very Christian area. A lot of Lutherans around here, a lot of Catholics, and a lot of evangelicals. And the evangelical church, which is one that I was a part of here in town, I got rebaptized, I should say, when I was 25 or 26. I think it was 26. I'm 28 now. But I was rebaptized. This was during that psychosis when I had my faith really strong. I was rebaptized. I have pictures of it. I won't post them, but the baptism ceremony my mom attended, so it must have been real whiplash when I went to treatment and came back an atheist. Because that was just months before. So, what was it going on about? Yeah, the reactions to people. The reactions of people, I've had evangelical Christians try to convince me of things, saying, Caleb, salvation's still available. You don't have to be damned to perdition for all of eternity. And I find the concept of hell to be vile and barbaric and offensive. So I really don't appreciate people saying stuff like that. I'm going to make this a 2-part video because I have some time restraints. I have some things I have to do today. So, and I've been going on for quite a while, rambling on and on. So this is part 1 of my atheism video. I'll probably make a list of things I want to talk about next time, which will make the video a little more structured. Yeah, and I'm gonna try to figure out how to edit on my phone. I don't have a computer right now that can do it. I don't have Wi-Fi right now. I go off my phone exclusively, so I'm living in the internet dark ages still, but I will figure something out and hopefully up the production quality. I do want to get a camera and a microphone so I can have some production value. But anyway, whether you are a Christian, a Muslim, a Jew, a Jain, a Sikh, a Buddhist, an atheist, an agnostic, or a Pastafarian, I hope that we all can get along. Apostasy should not be punished by death. That's a little bit extreme. A lot extreme. It's barbaric. And from a different time. So I hope you all have a wonderful day or evening, if it's evening where you are, whenever you're watching this. And remember, I'm not confrontational. I'm just an atheist. I just don't believe in God. And I have reasons for that I'll go into next time. So thanks for everyone who subscribed to me. I know this video might be controversial, but I'm ready for comments. So anyway, have a great day.